Welcome to Pandora's Awareness Podcast, a place where we collect stories and circulate life-changing wisdom. I am your host, Asher, and my co-host today is Queen Lav, and our guest today is Jamie Smith. And Jamie, you're here because we get to talk about victory, and for the folks that are listening, we get to talk about victory today. If you got a victory in your life, we're going to celebrate together. Just think about the way we celebrate victories here today, and just do the same thing for you. So, Jamie, if you don't mind telling us where you're hailing from, what you specialize in, how you adding value to the world, and who you being a hero to.
And I'm sorry, what was the last question?
Who you being a hero to?
Oh, okay. So my name's Jamie Smith, and I'm a writer, and I have a bunch of different roles, but mostly people know me as a writer. I live in Northwest Arkansas, and I would say my latest victory is my book that I've always written for other people, but not for myself. And
Mm.
this was for the audience, but it was also to help guide other people. But I also needed to write it for myself. The book is called Destination Changes, and it talks about how I have this entrepreneurial spirit and then all these different tool sets that I've developed. But it hit me that I didn't just start using those when I created my business 14 years ago. I have been using them my whole life, with being born with a disability, having major chronic illness, job loss, identity crisis of faith, all these different major curveballs and major life events that would thwart some people. I've been able to use a lot of this mindset and these ideas to deal with those in a healthy way. And I wanted to share that with other people so that they could maybe use some of the same tool sets, but most importantly, realize that they already have a lot of those ideas in their head. They just haven't used them, they haven't nurtured them. So for me, that's been a big win this year, is being able to accomplish that.
Mm.
And that's how you add value to the world. And who do
Mhm.
you think you are a hero to?
Hero? I've never really thought of myself as a hero. I think that my life can inspire others who are going through similar difficulties or similar circumstances to not give up, to not to realize that life has value no matter what comes your way. There's always value, and there's always well, for me, it's my faith, but you can always find value and purpose no matter what happens, and that your purpose and your value does not rely on other people's viewpoints.
Okay, you made me really curious how your entrepreneurial skills helped you overcoming the obstacles in life by having a disability.
Okay, so for example, I have the key traits of an entrepreneur. I've got you've got let's see if I can spit these out. Reframe circumstances. So a lot of times when people think of reframing circumstances, they think, oh, that means making lemons out of lemonade. And that's not, or making lemonade out of lemons. Let's see if I can get the silly cliche correct. Sorry about that.
Mhm.
Um, but that's not necessarily what it means for me. For me, reframing circumstances is understanding all sides of something. So when someone tells me the glass is half full or half empty, I tell them it's both, because you have to see it from both sides of that to fully understand what's going on. So you can reframe and turn things around so that you can see it from both sides. And that is an entrepreneurial skill set that really helps me. Another one is lives within boundaries, but not a box. So I'm big on boundaries, about respecting others, but also expecting them to respect you and your needs. But that doesn't mean that you have to be boxed into this tiny little thing. The box shape can move. And as long as you're staying within a certain boundary and a certain mindset, you can you can rearrange your box to fit whatever you need. And so another one is my mind just went blank. So there's a total of seven, but then you also need a specific tool set. What you need is the boundaries. I did talk about that a little bit. You also need I call it the tribe or your people. And I think that one's important because I use what I've learned a lot about having your tribe or your community is that it doesn't necessarily make up everybody in a group. Like, we'll talk about the writer community. Well, not every writer is going to be your friend. Not every writer is going to be on your side. Not every Christian or person of whatever faith you are is going to be on your side. And so you build your tribe, you build your community around you based on who they are, but also what you are and what you need. And so being able to build that and establish that is really important to your success, because people are going to be and have your back, but you're also going to have their back. It's and finding the right people that ripple out and just build a safety net for you as you go along life. That's not going to bail on you. That's not going to try to overcome you. And so that they're going to be along, but they're also going to be alongside you. So that's another tool that I've used. And so does that answer your question or?
It does, it does.
Okay.
It does, but now I'm a little bit curious if you would like to share your journey and when did your destination changed and how did you manage that change?
Okay. So, I feel like through life, I've gone through a lot of changes. That phrase, the life's about the journey, not the destination.
For
Well, what they
sure.
don't tell you is that the destination changes. And so, like, I used to think I was going to get married, be in the newspaper business my whole life. I'm no longer well, I'm back in the newspaper business now, but I've been self-employed for 14 years. I was going to work full time for the rest of my life, but I was born with a disability, but that did not keep me from working. What has kept me from working where I've lost my career is I've developed several autoimmune disorders and other chronic illnesses. And so that's been a huge blow to my life. And so I've had to pull back to where now I only work about 25 hours a month instead, not a week, a month. And so that's been a major change because I'm usually a very busy person. And so that's been a major life change. Getting laid off was a huge deal. I used to work in the newspaper industry, like I've said, and I worked for two competing newspapers. And so when they merged, they had two of everybody, then they only needed one of everybody. So 60 of us got laid off. Well, I was one of those people. And so my husband and I didn't want to leave the area. So I had to figure out a new career. So throughout my life, I've had to reinvent myself several times, but either career-wise, belief system, and just reinvent who I am and what that means for the world and how the world can relate to me, but also how I relate to the world. And so I've had to do that multiple times. In fact, I'm going through that right now, just switching from being more of a writer that ghostwrites people's blogs. I still do that some, but mostly I was doing content writing, and now I'm getting back more into a little bit of journalism, but also writing. I've got the book that just came out, and I've already started my second book, and so becoming an author and just the change in the mindset for that is very, very different. Even though it's all writing, it's all the words, who you're doing things for and why makes a big difference. And you can become, like you've said, a hero. You can become that person that can create a world for somebody else, and not create the world, but can have a big impact on the world. Uh, so, for example, my life's mission statement is to inspire people towards better self-awareness and ownership of their inherent value, core beliefs, and purpose through my own personal vulnerability, storytelling, and leadership. So the reason I chose to read that off to you is because what group of people I'm serving is just evolving. I'm still living my life mission statement, but it's just who it's for is evolving a little bit.
Beautiful. I'm super curious to read your book, and I think it's a great topic. Why? My destination changed throughout my life, and it's kind of hard to accept the fact that while you are on the journey and you want to get to a certain point, it's kind of hard to make that change because honestly, there's a feeling of failure that creeps in when you now have to, change everything and go to different destinations. Almost like, oh my God, I'm letting myself down. I'm letting everybody around me down, maybe because I just told everyone that I'm going to destination A, and all of a sudden I kind of want to go to destination B, but I don't know if am I being truthful to myself? If I just abandon destination A, am I letting people down, the people who expect me to go to destination A? But in reality, you have to understand that it's your journey, and who cares? Yeah, you said you told everyone that you're going to destination A, but if on your journey you realize ahead there's actually a better, destination for me and pet in the same time while changing destination, I will just do whatever is best for me. But yeah, it's hard to deal with that, with changing your destination. It's really hard.
Yes. Well, and some people would take that as selfish. They're like, oh, well, you're just looking out for yourself. No, that's not selfish. That they're welcome to come along the journey. If you thought you were going to go destination A and you end up at C or D or one of the other letters, uh, you needed to do what your path was supposed to be, because, you maybe didn't know that A was the wrong path. And so if you've been pushed towards another destination, then if people can't come along with that, then that season has changed. That season has moved on. And that's not selfish, that's self-care.
Yeah. What do you think, Asher? Did your destination change throughout the years?
And I love this conversation, by the way. And I'm listening to Jamie just rapping through the first when you start off with the polar opposite as far as trying to balance those two out. We're talking about you being an entrepreneur and just be able to flip the thing like different sides. And that really makes sense because this is something once my mentality was break through this point here, Jamie, life really started making sense. Because I used to think about, oh, I gotta think about the positive all the time. But then I realized when I start thinking about the best case scenario, worst case scenario, and then I create that spark in between them two, and I start figuring what's going on in between them, like, oh, it start making sense to me. Because sometimes I get stuck in the positive, like I'm in the positive, but I need some friction. But I create friction by comparing to the negative, and then I create more ideas in the middle. So when you talk about flipping things, that makes sense to me because I don't think people understand how powerful it is to really start working on different angles and playing them both against each other sometimes to create more ideas because ideas sparks in the middle like negative and positive electricity, right? You don't get electricity without the positive and negative. They got a spark, and the spark is the ideas and the dream and the stuff like that. And that happens when you was talking about the instrumental journey itself. So that's what popped up for me. What are your thoughts, Jamie?
My thoughts on what's powerful on, I'm sorry, I don't understand the question.
Did I lose you just now? Did I lose both of you?
Hey, you lost me a little bit, so
I lost you a little
rephrase
bit.
your
All right.
question.
Okay. Okay, let me go back. So when I was listening to Jamie when you were speaking about the entrepreneurial skill, right? Playing both sides, looking at both sides. And what resonated with me was the openness of that piece because at first I didn't understand what that really means, being an entrepreneur. People come to you with ideas, but then when you flip it, that's when they get more ideas. Right? When if they come to you with a negative thing, like, oh, I see the obstacle. Let me help you flip it and look at the vision, right? And go back and forth. And that part create the idea, create the sparks. Just like electricity. You got a negative and a positive, right? Without a negative and a positive, there's no electricity. So, but when you
Right.
start looking at life that way, you start realizing it's the like the back and forth between the two, create the sparks, the ideas in between. So that's what
Right, the
happened for me when you
balance.
was talking about the flipping being an entrepreneur skill set, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
the half full and half
The
empty.
half full, half empty thing. Yeah.
Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right. It creates a certain balance because you can't have one without the other.
hmm And even half full, half empty, the other part of it still you still got a cup, right?
Yeah,
And that's even
and
more
it can
powerful.
be
I got a cup.
refilled.
Yeah, you just got yeah, true. True. Okay, so if I gotta ask you this question, Jamie, because I'm listening to your story and I love that you being a writer, because me and Live we on that journey too, and we understand how powerful that is. And you say you've been writing, but you haven't publishing, so you've been a writer but not an author. But now you're like, I'm owning my ideas. I'm just gonna be an author now and a writer, right? Because sometimes people don't understand you're two separate roles. And I learned that when AI come along, I'm like, oh yeah, AI is a writer, but I'm still the author. Like I'm the idea generator.
Right.
Same thing. So now you own in both roles. Now you decide you're gonna write for yourself. So now the journey you've been on with writing, like I'm curious about your 14 years of writing, or even more than that time frame. Like, what is the big most transformation experience you've had just from writing itself, the journey of just writing?
My personal transformation, you mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, and I actually, this line, I can't quote it directly, but it's a Friday afternoon. I can't quote any of my own stuff directly. But basically I say that, as a writer, especially as a neurodivergent writer, using words
Mm,
and writing is not only how I understand the world, but it's how I express the world.
mm,
And so for me, it's been very healing to be able to be a writer. I mean, it's not just my income. It's through every major life change. I've been able to use blogs. I've been able to use journals. I've been able to use words to really express how I'm feeling, and understand what I'm feeling. And so I think that that's been transformative for me because I've been able to express myself not only for other people, but for my own mind, kind of get it out of my own head a little bit instead of, back and forth in my own head. I can
mm-hmm.
write, and that helps me come to conclusions. It helps me make decisions. It helps me sometimes leave a decision, vacate a decision. So I would say that writing has been a transformative thing for me my entire life.
Mm. You know, I gotta ask you because I was talking to one of my friends today too about the neurodivergent brains, the folks that folks that show up with that neurodivergent brain, and we was talking about her son because I think he's has had the neurodivergent stuff too, but he's not a writer. He's more like he got artistic ways of expressing versus instead of words like painting and stuff like that. But he's having a
Mhm.
lot of difficulties, and I'm trying to figure out because I know it was important for me because I'm also I have the neurodivergent symptoms too when it comes to like dyslexia and AD so forth and so on. And I realized that the power of words when I was able to write, I didn't like reading, but I like writing. But then for you to write well, you gotta read well, right? So to speak. So then we was talking about his challenge with just like trying to express the ideas because he's have a lot of ideas, very creative, but doesn't know to translate that information to other people to understand. So you being a writer and how you come up on writing, I see a new diversion. So how early did you discover writing as a skill set, as a capability that you can actually master for you?
Now, I'm sorry, I don't, could you repeat the question?
I say, what age did you discover the skill set of being a writer? Because even so, sometimes
What age?
neurodivergent folks have difficulty writing. When do you discover your skill set in writing?
Well, I knew the first time, so one of the first times I went to career day, when you
Mm-hmm.
dress up and go to school is what you want to be when you grow up. A lot of people dressed up as whatever their parents do, or doctors or lawyers or firemen. I went as a journalist. So I was about 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I went and had the little fedora hat with, newspaper inside, and so I knew at that age that that's what I wanted to do. I was about 8.
Mm-hmm.
When I
Eight.
started doing public speaking, I was about 14,
Okay.
but it was all my own speeches that I wrote, and I just was, instead of putting them down on paper, I was expressing them verbally.
So what do you like to write about the most? Let me go there.
Life for me, I like to write about life. I keep telling myself I want to write a fiction book, but I have no idea about character development or plot development. It blows my mind. I don't get it. So for me personally, I like to write reflective work.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as for clients or um, writing, when I write for other people, I mostly enjoy writing websites and I enjoy writing newspaper articles because my tagline for my business is giving you a voice with a written word. And so the way that happens with a newspaper article is you are giving, when people are informed with facts and without opinion, and I'm really known for that, is I'm able to keep myself out of the story and I get the facts straight most of the time. uh, you make better decisions about your world, about who you want to vote for, about how you want your society to be, how you want your community to be, when you have that journalistic integrity available to you. And so that's how that kind of writing helps me influence the world.
Okay. So this is my big curiosity now. So a person that can write so well, like, why did it
Mhm.
take you so long to publish your book? Like for you, like, because I heard a lot of people that are like ghostwriter, people are really good writers, but they never publish. I'm trying to figure out like why not? Why they don't do it? My curiosity there.
You know, what's the phrase, cobbler with shoeless children, or I was the plumber
Yeah.
with the leaky faucet.
Mm,
Um, just so busy taking care of other people's things, taking care of other people's writing, that I just never gave myself time to work on my own stuff. A lot of
mm,
imposter syndrome, which I talk about in the book, talking about how to overcome imposter syndrome. Keep thinking, this is my story. Who wants to read my story? You know, why is
mm,
my story interesting? And
Yeah.
so that's actually part of the reason I did. After, at the end of each chapter, I ask people to reflect on themselves and say, okay, so what does this theory, this thing that I believe in and that has helped me, what does this look like for you? And so I want them to reflect and be able to put the principle into their own life, and not just, because who wants to just read someone's story? That's
mm.
that's kind of boring. I still think it's boring, and it's been published. But so yeah, that's why it took so long, is imposter syndrome and spending too much time on client work and not treating myself like a client.
Oh my God, I love that you shared that with us because, hey, you're a professional writer, right? And we have this club, book club for us, because we're actually all writing, co-authoring a immigrant storybook. So we're 11 immigrants who are telling their story, and we all had these issues that you're talking about, right? I mean, like
Mhm.
you had that, oh, who would care about my story? And I'm not there yet, whatever there means for everybody. And we all had these blockages in our journey, but it's so
Mhm.
healing to actually be able to complete it and put it out there. So yeah.
Yeah,
Mm,
I think that our story, people always, let's see how I should say this. When I was in the newspaper business full time, people would always say, I'm not interesting. I don't have an interesting story. And I said, everybody has a
mm,
story. Everybody. And so it may be the everyday thing for you, but for somebody else, it can be that flash of light that gives them hope. It can give them that idea of seeing the world through somebody else's eyes. You can be, um, a beacon for them, or you can just be that person that is me, that just says, me too. You know
mm.
what? You're not alone. So by sharing your immigrant stories, you're doing that for other people. And I was doing that for people that are living through stuff like I am.
Mm. This is powerful, by the way, because I'm listening, and when I wrote my first book too, my second book, even like all the books I read about like I was not excited about sharing them. Like I'm sure, like you hear right now, Jamie's like, yeah, it's my book, but when you talk about somebody else's story, like you're really excited about sharing it. So when we decided to like do the collaboration with other people, it becomes a lot more exciting now because it's more than us. It's not just about me. Like who cares about my story, right? No one cares about your story unless you make it about them. But when you're doing stuff together with other people, you become a lot more excited. Like, I can't wait to tell you about Lavinia's story. Like, I read her stuff and it was like, oh my God, the stuff she's been through. Or, we talk about Rim. Like, it's exciting. But when it's just me, I was like, there was actually got to go and talk about your book. Like, I don't feel it. It's just like my story. Like,
Because we downplay our stories, yeah.
yes, it's crazy. But that's what happens. Jamie?
Yeah.
Mm,
Well, and my whole life, this is another thing I jokingly tell people about the book, is that my whole life I've had people say, I don't know how you do it. How do you
mm.
live with a disability and go to school and, manage a home and do all these, how do you do it? Well, this is my 17 chapter answer for that.
Nice.
17 chapter. Okay, how long did
Yeah,
it
they're
take you
all
to write
very
your book?
short chapters. I'm
How long
sorry.
it took you, how long it took you to write your book? Mm.
So it took me 3 years, but the last year I wrote about 75% of it. Because my
Ah.
husband, I lost a couple clients through no fault of my own. They actually just decided to hire someone full time to do what work I was doing, and so I lost a couple clients. And my husband said, "You know what, Jamie, just take the time to write your book. Just get the stupid thing written. This is crazy." Um, so he was willing to take a hit in our income so that I could get the book out.
Mm. So what was the hardest part of your book to write? Let me go there with you.
telling the stories, and I still struggle with this when I go back and read the book. I feel like I repeat some of the same stories, and some of that's on purpose. I have one part of the book where I'm talking about the different traits of an entrepreneur, and then I
Mhm.
break out each trait into a separate chapter. And so for the one where I'm talking about all the different traits together, I'm comparing it between two different stories, two different entrepreneurial efforts that I did. The first one, I tried to start a newsletter in my neighborhood. Well, I was like 8. So,
Mm.
that wasn't real successful. I also tried to sell roly-polies,
Mm.
also not successful. But apparently people didn't want to buy pill bugs from a child. But so but I talked about those entrepreneurial efforts and compare them. And so writing the different stories, I think, was the hardest for me because I didn't know, I could never figure out, okay, how much detail do I put in? People need the details, but am I sharing too much? Am I oversharing? Am I people gonna miss the opportunities here if I'm not vulnerable enough? So just finding that balance was really hard for me.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Are you like running it through the eyes of other people that can probably help you and be more objective uh, when it comes to this balance of how much to share and how much not to share?
A little bit. I would ask some friends for their opinions, and I did have some beta readers. But I just, I tried not to share any embarrassing details about anybody. I did
Those
not,
are the
this was
good
not
stuff.
supposed to be yeah, right. I know. I could have totally turned it into an expose, but I didn't want it to be an expose. I didn't want it to be, trauma drama. I wanted it to be educational, and um, the actual genre is called teaching memoir. And
Mm.
so I wanted to just be able to help guide people gently instead of, expose all the secrets.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree.
I like the juicy stuff, Jamie. I like the juicy stuff. Gotta talk about the
Mhm.
juicy stuff.
You like the juicy stuff? Well, move to Hollywood.
Is that where all the folks that like the juicy stuff go?
Yeah.
Hollywood.
Well, that's
Oh.
where all the crazy memoirs come out of anyway.
Mm.
Yeah, well, I like what you said that you didn't want to, talk about people necessarily or expose stuff because I chose not to use any name in my book. Yeah, I intentionally wanted, I didn't want to use no name. People will feel themselves when they'll read the book, but I just, and even the good people, like I had wonderful people in my life. Asher is part of my book. Yeah, I did not use his name because I felt like once I use one name, I have to use name for everybody,
Mhm.
and I just don't want to
Mhm.
use no name.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm. Well, well, we had a good chat right now, Jamie. So now, if I gotta go, I wanted to ask a question earlier too, like why is like writing so important for you? But I think you might have answered. But I want to ask the question, see what your answer is. Like, why writing and telling your story like is so important for you right now?
I feel like, that's a good question. I can go super deep with that. But I think on the basic level, writing for me is just a skill. It's how I express myself. It's how I understand the world, like I mentioned. But also, I think telling your own story is empowering because you lose the shame.
Mm.
Shame and control are very tied together. And
Yeah.
so I'm not exposing everything. This isn't a tell-all like we've said, but um, telling your story is empowering because when you aren't being held back by the shame, you let other people out into the light.
We're gonna talk for another hour. Let's go. God damn, Jamie, that's the juicy stuff I'm talking about. That's juicy
Yeah.
stuff I'm talking about because what you just say just now, like telling your story, really brings you out. Do you know what people are hiding? And they're hiding because they haven't tell their story. And if they would only tell it, or free, that would make them.
Yeah.
And when people start doing that, how much freedom that gives them. Like you want to find freedom, find a way to take what's inside of you out of you because it's been
There's a
suffocating this whole
phrase.
time. When you do it, oh my God, like I'm seeing every time I see people do it, I'm like, man, look at you now. You could smile, you could laugh, you could feel good because that
Mhm.
stuff that you was hiding in this cave or this vault, you put it out, put it in auction. Like people like feel like you feel like you're you. So I can only
Mhm.
imagine. What are your thoughts?
Well, I keep thinking as you were talking, I keep thinking of a phrase that I was trying to think of earlier, that we're only as sick as our secrets.
Mm-hmm.
And so when when we acknowledge those, not that, again, not that you go out and just tell everybody everything, but they can't be held against you anymore.
Yeah.
And that's
Yes.
very freeing, because you not only are helping someone else understand you, you come to a better understanding of yourself. I can't tell you
Mm.
how many times I've either been in a podcast interview or even a therapy talk, with my therapist, where I'll be talking and all of a sudden a light bulb will go on, and it's like, I'm just now realizing that. I'm just now realizing this. And
Mm.
so I think that by telling our story and writing is a modality. Writing is a form of expression. It's a method, I think is the word better looking for. But sharing our story, I think um, it helps it helps us, and it also helps others. So that's why I think it's so important.
Part of my big dream, part of Lavinia share part of this dream is for everybody to have a book. Everybody should. Like I think
Mhm.
we're at the age where we all can do it. Because I used to think about like, what if I read like the story about my great grandfather? Like, what if you had a couple books out there I can read about? Like what that guy was thinking at a certain age in his life. Like how much would that do for my mentality? When I'm thinking about life. But we don't have those things because not everybody writes. At least do an autobiography or some kind of memoir, right? But I think we can all do this at this age and time because we got the tools now to really help us analyze our story
Mhm.
and put down what's the raw data into something and organize it. Like the tools are here now, and the people have time to do it now. So it's like, oh my God. So I love the writing piece. I love the expression piece.
I love it. And Jamie, would you still be a ghostwriter for people? Like, let's say we have people around us who, and I would like to write my story, but I just don't know where to start. I'm just not a writer. I could use a ghostwriter to write my story. Would you do that?
I've never written someone else's full book before, but I would be willing to talk to them about it. I do it mostly through blogs and like if they ever needed help creating a website that helps tell the story, I've done that before. Like I actually had a client one time that wrote a book, but they needed a website and blogs to help express the book, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Uh, so to kind of gain interest into the book. So yeah, I'd love to help them with that.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Okay, and if our listeners are listening right now, it's like, yeah, I need Jamie to create my blog and to promote my stuff. How can they find you?
My business website is jamiesnotebook.com. And then my author and speaking website is jamieannsmith.com.
Mm, perfect. Jamie, this has been fun. And I have a few questions before we wrap up. And
Okay.
appreciate you coming on and sharing with Destination Changes. That's a really good name, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had pulled that name and like people's like, yeah, that's it. But or you just woke up with that name and they were like, that's gonna be the name of the book, right? But
Mhm.
that's a really good name, a really good name. So,
Thank you.
congratulations to you on your victory of actually finishing the book and working on the next one because I know most writers once they do it, right, they they can't stop. Now you got the virus for publishing and so you won't be able to stop now. You're just gonna keep writing till life takes you back, right? But
Right.
it but if you had to wrap up today and give us your biggest takeaway, and I understand this too, Jamie. I just noticed that I think you have challenged with my accent. I can tell. I say, oh man, I gotta slow down for Jamie. But
No, sorry. And sometimes I'm like, okay, but what was the question?
yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, cool. So if you had to wrap up, tell us your biggest takeaway or giveaway from this conversation, what would it be?
Biggest takeaway from this conversation to me,
Or giveaway,
uh,
yeah.
or takeaway, well, like when I go back to my conference that we're running tonight, I'm gonna tell them that we had a great conversation about um how you've created your own victory and
Mm-hmm.
how that can serve other people and how you can use your victory to be a hero for somebody else.
Mm. So now if you had to go back to that one question, who you would be a hero to, what would the answer be now?
Because that to me, that's such an syndrome question. Because I don't feel like a hero to anybody. Um,
I think you are. Or maybe a
I,
Shero. If you gotta put an S on it, who you been a Shero to?
um, People who tell me, whenever I answer these questions, I always think of what people tell me. And they tell me that my story, not necessarily just the book, but my story, my life story that they get to witness every day, reminds them that they that they have value, but also reminds them to take care of themselves, reminds them because they have value, they need to take care of themselves. They need to embody mind and spirit, that they learn from me how to have perseverance. And so to me, those are the people that I can be a Shero or a hero to, or those that are maybe really struggling and they just need to see someone else did this, maybe I can too.
That's very clear to me.
Yep.
If somebody feeling that way will hear you talk, they're like, oh, that's my hero, Jamie. I need to talk to her.
Yep.
So
Cool.
that's
Thank
what I
you.
hope.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you for sharing your story and your
Thank you.
book and bits of your journey. And if we want to read your entire journey, I think we will find it in the book, right?
Yeah, pretty close.
Last question,
Awesome.
Jamie.
Sure.
What is that one thing or two thing when people do it drive you crazy?
One or two things that people do that drive me crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Personally, it bothers me when people come up behind me in my wheelchair and just start pushing me or grabbing my wheelchair.
Mm-hmm.
They think they're helping, but it's really frustrating to have someone just take control of you like that. When I look at outside behavior, not directed towards me, pettiness. Petty just
Pettiness.
makes me mad.
Mm. Okay, now we know.
You see that in how people are handling elections. You see it how people handle disagreements, and I just petty, there's no place for it.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Those are
Jamie.
good things to be annoyed with. So yeah.
Mhm.
All right, Lav, I'll let you wrap up.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Jamie's story was really, really inspiring, and we authors enjoyed it a lot, and hopefully everybody did. Now you know where to find her if you need her help or you just want to share your thoughts with her. And you guys have an awesome weekend. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much. I really enjoyed meeting both of you.
All right.
Thanks.